Hi, everyone. On today's episode, I'm joined by Nicole Lange, a licensed acupuncturist and holistic fertility educator who brings grounded, nurturing perspective to the journey of family building. Nicole invites us to slow down, tune into our bodies, and care for our whole selves, physically, mentally, and emotionally. She shares how her own path led her to acupuncture and why she's such a strong advocate for blending Eastern and Western approaches to support fertility. We talk about the emotional layers of healing, the impact of stress on the body, and simple, practical ways to feel more balanced and supported, whether you're the one getting the IVF shots or walking alongside someone who is. Whether you're an intended parent, egg donor, surrogate, or simply curious about holistic fertility, Nicole's insight will leave you feeling more connected, more informed, and more empowered in your journey. Enjoy! Me, you, and who? Who knew it would take more than two people to have a baby? In a world where infertility is no longer a taboo topic, this podcast will take you through all of the different aspects of surrogacy and egg donation through the lens of many who walk this journey in different ways. My name is Whitney Hall, and I am a two-time surrogate, now turned surrogacy coordinator for Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, the very agency I used when I chose to carry for two amazing families. With this podcast, it is our goal to help guide and support you as you learn about what it takes to grow a family in an alternative way, as well as hear inspiring and beautiful stories of how this path has changed lives forever. We can't wait for you to hear about just one more way happy families are created every day. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited because acupuncture, I think, is one of those. I feel like whenever you Google or you Pinterest or you do any sort of research, I think all of those, kind of fun things that like, here, eat more pineapple or drink pomegranate juice, and then it says acupuncture. And, I think it's one of those things that like pops up. And
Absolutely.
A lot of people say it, but they don't necessarily know a whole lot about it or, just all of those things. So I am just so excited to talk to you and just hear more about, just what acupuncture can do when it comes to, fertility. But before we get there, just like, tell us who you are. Let's just let's find out your story. So please, Nicole, go for it.
Well, first of all, I'm very excited to be here too. And I'm excited to be talking about one of the actual evidence-based things on that list because the pineapple core and the magic socks and all of that, we can talk about that. It's so sweet. And it does have a place actually in holistic kind of medicine, but it's not scientific. It's more rituals and community and all sorts of really fantastic ripples that are real and do things in the body. But acupuncture is very evidence-based, and I am a very strange acupuncturist because my foundation is in science.
Yeah.
And so my first book when I was growing up was How Louis Pasteur Invented the Vaccine for Rabies. That was my first favorite book.
And
some people will know it of a certain age group, and they're like, I had that. Those are my people. I know I listened to your episode with Jordan, and she just talked about how much she came to egg donation being a science nerd.
Absolutely. I was going to say, kind of you were a self-described giant science nerd.
Oh, huge.
You actually said you were on a career path towards just genetics.
Yeah. So I wanted to, I grew up in the age of Jurassic Park, and I was like, yes. I'm going to do genetics. Got accepted to a fancy school. I was AP everything science, and then this upheaval in my own life happened, and it led me to question everything. And that upheaval was in the form of lack of control and everything that I thought I knew and everything that I thought, you behave this way and you have this certain sort of life, which really relates a lot to how people feel going through fertility. But for me, it was a sexual assault and a suicide attempt because it really shook who I thought I was and what it meant about me. And so I had this really hard turning upside down, and Western medicine saved my life. It was all my family knew. It's all I knew. It was amazing. I was in the ICU. and I got stable, and I got all these amazing piecemeal treatments like Western
Mhm.
medicine can do for
Yeah.
different bits and parts of me. But I got to this point kind of in my mid 20s where I had gotten as far as I could go there,
Mhm.
and I didn't feel as good as I wanted to feel. And so I was like, what's sciency, but maybe goes somewhere beyond what I know. And I learned that Chinese medicine is a master's degree, and the academic nerd in me was like, okay. And then it's like a third of it is Western medicine, and I was like, okay. And then I was like, cadaver lab. All right, I think this is for me. So I showed up, and literally all the people in my class were like, I was wild harvesting herbs in India, and I've been helping deliver babies, and I've done holistic medicine my entire existence. And I was like, I have Doritos in my lunch.
Yes.
I'm here for the cadavers.
I love it though. I mean, I really, because I think I think you're the general kind of, thought whenever people are like traditional Chinese medicine is this
Hmm.
whole like, let me go harvest things, let me,
Totally.
wear my boho skirts and, and
Hmm.
whatnot. And there's this kind of this image of it. And I love that you were like, no, 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 no. Like, yes, that's, sure. We can
Intrigued.
appreciate all of that. But there is science
Yes.
behind this. And I love that it's not one or the other, it's bringing them all together. And in your case, I love that you
Yes.
honor, how Western medicine saved you up to a point, and instead of accepting where you were, you wanted to go beyond that.
Yes. And it made me a weird acupuncture student and a really weird acupuncturist because there's this polarization in so many things right now, but including in fertility medicine where it's like, pick, are you natural? Are you holistic? Or are you doing treatments? Or do you want to fix this with seed cycling? Spoiler alert, don't do that one. Um, it's not so evidence-based. Or are you going to do this birth control pill, which is unnatural? And it's just so unhelpful and uncentered on the patient experience, on the person at the center of it who just wants to feel better and feel whole and feel seen and use all the tools. And
Mhm.
so I love being this kind of acupuncturist that can marry this traditional, tried and true modality that sometimes we don't really understand fully, even scientifically, with what we do know of the modern research, with the very science heavy fertility treatments. And that's all I do for 18 years. Because of my experience, I really felt drawn to women's health and mental health.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of extra studies on that. I launched my practice and I said, this is all I'm going to see. And that's all I've done for 18 years. And it very
Mhm.
quickly turned into a lot of fertility work because it's women's health and trauma and a lot of grief. And so it's such an honor.
Oh, I love that. I love that. One of the things that I love that you mention it is, it's on your website. You mentioned the phrase depth over volume when it comes
Hmm.
to patient care. Can
Yeah.
you kind of just go further in what you mean by that?
Yeah, so again, weird acupuncturist, but when I started in the student clinic, everyone was like, this is so slow. We need to see more patients. And so many people are just, you do your intake, they read it, they make their Chinese medicine diagnosis, and then it's hop up on the table, get the points, get the food recommendations, maybe some herbs on your way, come back this many times at this part of your cycle. And that to me was just, it was like, that's still very doctor centric, even though it's
Mhm.
from this model that's supposed to be more holistic. And so
Mhm.
I was like, no, I want to explain when I read a person's forms what I'm seeing and why I think they have the Chinese medicine diagnosis they have, how they got it, the ways that they can influence it, the ways that it is constitutional and that it's not something to be fixed. And so the beauty, the nuance, and so I see close to half the people, a little bit more than half the people in the time that most people work, the volume. And I love creating education. And I have had a wait list for almost 18 years in my practice because I think it's what people crave. It's
Yeah.
what I wanted. I wanted to understand, okay, why do I have stomach aches and anxiety and I can't sleep and my periods are horrible and, 50 other things. And when I was going through to be a student, I got to see how those things interconnect and the explanations holistically. And I got to see where the Western medicine would serve me and where I could go beyond that. And so that's really my goal in creating all the content and doing podcasts like this, is so that I can help more people, whether they see me or not, do
Mhm.
these things, because it shifts everything. It just makes
Yeah.
everything so much more balanced and human.
Yeah. Well, again, right, it's that whole body approach versus just, I have this one, just side effect or this one
Yeah.
thing that's bothering. Well, let's dig further. Let's not just put a band-aid on that. Let's look at
Yes.
it whole body. So, can you walk us through a little bit about how acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine can support
Mhm.
fertility, especially in the context of, IVF and egg donation and surrogacy?
Yeah. So we have this fantastic moment in Chinese medicine right now where we're looking at all these reductionistic imaging techniques and tests and things, and we can see things like certain acupuncture points have been linked to regulating immune function and certain aspects of the specific immune. The different kinds of cells. So when we talk
Yeah.
about recurrent miscarriage and things like that, we can look at certain acupuncture points are associated with stimulating mesenchymal stem cell generation, which is the kind of stem cells that adults can still make from their bone marrow. And so we're looking at things like plasma stem cell uterine washes and things that are being done experimentally, and seeing how acupuncture can kind of mimic that in a more natural, accessible way to people. We can look at Doppler studies of the artery index, the blood flow, the pulsatility index is called, to the uterus, for not only supporting implantation but building a really healthy placenta with lots of vasculature, less risk of preeclampsia, intrauterine growth restriction, stuff like that. So acupuncture does have really cool science and research that can be very specifically applied to different concerns, different things that we're thinking about. Even something as simple as for the day of embryo transfer, there's a combination of 2 points that they've been studied to relax the cervix. And
Yeah.
we know this from studies where doctors who are performing D&Cs were asked to compare this combination of points with numbing the cervix. And the doctor said it was easier to get through the cervix with this combination of acupuncture points versus the lidocaine. And they compared it to other sets of points. And then
Mm.
they also asked the patient, the person who's having the procedure, like how uncomfortable or comfortable, how much discomfort did they have after the procedure? And it was different and improved. So
Yeah.
something like making sure the RE can get the catheter through the cervix with less cramping and less sort of gunk, technical term, in the catheter, so there's less pressure on the embryo.
Yeah.
So there's really cool specific things that you can do. And then there's all this history of connecting the dots and saying, okay, but you're more than a uterus. You're more than you know, the conditions that where we put an embryo, and whether that's with the
Mhm.
surrogate or with someone using donor eggs, it's so important to say, okay, are you feeling really amped up because you're excited to be a surrogate? I listened to your episode, and like the joy that comes through, and the belief in one's body, and the joy, right? But like, I didn't sleep last night and I'm all amped up and I'm coursing with
Right.
adrenaline, right? That's a very different thing than like, I'm doing donor egg, I've exhausted this process with my own eggs, and so I'm feeling very guarded and there's some grief here. And so we want to add those kinds of things to the treatments, whether
Mm.
it's day of embryo transfer or the 2 week wait or wherever we're doing it.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So is it almost, I mean, I feel like it's kind of like the big word, but it sounds like you not only are you addressing just the biology of what your, uterus is being asked to do,
Mhm.
but it also almost sounds like you're kind of like testing those cortisol levels and looking at, again, just that whole body aspect of it.
Yes. And so much of kind of that when you alluded to the I'm looking at Google and what should I add, right?
Yeah.
There's a slippery slope here because sometimes any of those things that you listed can be done in a way where it's kind of what I call clenchy, which is fight or flight, and
Yeah.
it's releasing cortisol, and that's competing for receptors with the same receptors as like progesterone, which you're exogenously injecting, and you want it to register, right? So even if you're doing all this external, very reductionistic things, if we're doing Chinese medicine in a truly holistic way, which I coined the phrase faux holism versus true holism. So faux holism is like, yeah, it's holistic, but I hate it and I'm stressed out and it's not in my budget and I'm cramming it in and I really am stressed out about it, versus like, hey, this person authentically honors my grief or my joy and excitement and how's my digestion and is getting my cervix ready for this embryo transfer. That's true holism.
I love that. I love that. So how does you were again, I love how much I love how science based all of this is, and it's not just, let me just like stick some needles in and kind of give you this almost placebo effect of like pretty
Mm-hmm.
music, and then you're calm and quiet and look, we've done good things. Not that that's not great, but I love how there is so much science behind this. How does that pair with what the RE is doing? You alluded to, I love that you alluded to the birth control pill, because I only did acupuncture for one of my journeys, and I mentioned to the acupuncturist that I was on birth control, and she got the biggest eyes, and there was, I almost felt this sense of judgment, and I was like,
Ugh,
I'm a surrogate, so I will be on the birth control
this
because
is required.
I'm to be on the birth control. Like that's what I've been told to do. So,
Yes.
like, how do you kind of marry those two, what you're doing
Hmm.
along with what the RE is asking and what is part of their protocol?
Yeah, first of all, that is such a perfect example of faux holism. Like it's like I'm going to shame you and make you feel like you should be doing it different, but also I'm supposed to be making you feel more balanced. That's such a like that's not okay. That's what we need to see. I talk about taking off the like baby blinders of faux holism and being like, is this actually serving me? Does this feel supportive? And we know acupuncture's more than placebo, right? So acupuncture outperforms placebo, but placebo, I could nerd out. We could do a whole nother show about placebo. Like placebo is neurochemicals and electrical signals and your brain activity being in different areas. And like this is and that's where like the socks and the ritual and the community can be medicinal.
Yeah.
But it's not the socks, it's the neurochemicals that the socks are, and for another person it might really stress them out, so then they're not getting that. But like taking all of that placebo plus what we know acupuncture can do beyond placebo, and then true holism is honoring like, okay, I understand that absolutely a surrogate needs to down regulate and get prepared for this transfer and not have her ovaries in the mix or risk ovulating in certain types of cycles. And so maybe it's more like, oh, you're feeling kind of bloated and bogged down because you just started birth control, or you're feeling more tired because you're just adding these exogenous hormones, and we're going to amp up as we add maybe estrogen patches. And so,
Mhm.
we're going to follow that instead of making it feel like it's a unnatural thing. We're going to say, okay, then you might not always be constipated, but when you're taking all this progesterone, you have a very good chance of becoming really constipated. So let's add constipation points. There's some really great intestinal motility points.
There you go.
So it's about, you see the constitution, you see the classic Chinese medicine, you see the modern science, and you marry all of that with what's specifically happening in the cycle, and all of a sudden you have again true holism, where it's like it's not picking or one is better than the other. It's all of it, and it's all
Mhm.
really important and beautiful and in service to, like, what I don't ever want to lose sight of is this is in service to people that have love in their hearts and want to have a family and want to parent. And so a big part of what I talk about in my online courses and in my content is just thinking about the ratios of what we're doing. Like, yes, I want the cervix to be relaxed, but I really want to create an environment where we're just making this embryo feels the body feels safe to say yes to a pregnancy,
Mm.
because so much of this process, especially on the donor egg side, has kind of gotten to where you kind of forget, or you get these suggestions that say that that has to go in the background until you have a baby. And
Mm.
so if we can bring that back and be like, no, this is really about you, if you're partnered, you and your partner, you on your own, you wanting to have a baby, and that creates all these ripples and all these neurochemical things and changes, and just feels nice and protects the person's mental health and quality of life and relationships too.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I really just love this emphasis that you have on that whole body, that, hey, we're going to come alongside, and there are very obvious side effects to taking those hormones and doing all of those things, and let's address those, and let's also address the obvious mental health that is going
Mm-hmm.
through it, whether it is you're so excited or whether you're so nervous, or whether it's both, and just all of those things.
Totally.
What are ways that, and we've kind of already addressed it, but let's say, I think you did such a great job of, kind of saying like, hey, it maybe isn't always in the budget for someone.
Mm-hmm.
And, or it could just be a geographical issue and there's just nothing available. What are maybe some of those other things that someone can do, whether it's different Chinese medicines, different, we kind of alluded to the socks and the,
Yeah.
pineapple and, like things like that. What are some of those other things? And is there harm in any of that, countering what your RE is already doing?
I think if it's faux holism, there's a risk,
Okay.
right? If it's something that's stressing a person out or making a person choose, like I've had people that are like, well, my acupuncturist told me I should take these herbs during my IVF, but my RE said absolutely not. Like that's harmful. And
Yeah.
and not to say that the herbs are technically harmful or that either person is wrong about their modality, right? We all want to do no harm, but the what we're creating in that person is
Mhm.
this sense of like, where's your loyalty? It's such a gross thing to, or like what are you picking versus no, I'm going to enter in wherever I can, and there's literally a bajillion ways to be truly holistic. So there are specific things that you can put in that are more direct proxies for acupuncture. So on my fertility freebies page, I have a whole acupressure guide that is got a
Yeah.
glossary on the back. That's if you're doing a transfer, here's some points for before and after. If you're constipated, if you've got a headache, here's some points. So there's ways to DIY that. I have one of my most popular YouTube videos is about castor oil packs. Those can be nice self-care rituals for pelvic circulation. There's electrostim acupuncture, which can be somewhat mimicked by TENS units and not or cutaneous above the surface kind of substitutes that people can DIY. I've got YouTube videos about that and talk about that.
Mhm.
So there's so many ways that a person could create something that's in the budget that fits their where they are. Sometimes they have one acupuncturist and they meet them and they just don't click for whatever reason,
Yeah.
and so um, that's important to listen to. You shouldn't just be like, well, they're the only acupuncturist that can come on site to my clinic, so therefore they're going to come and make me feel a little stressed about what I haven't done 8 weeks before and say all these things that freak me out.
Sure.
Don't do that. That's not a good fit. And
Yeah.
then like to come back to the idea of ratios, I so enjoyed listening to the variety of shows that you've talked to different people that have gone through this journey themselves and experts. So often there are these side notes that I really want to flip the script on, right? Like I listened to an episode earlier this morning where she was talking about she's just like fourth failed IVF and she's like, I want a giant dog. I just want the Great Dane to snuggle. And it's like that feels like that's actually a truly holistic way to take your life off of hold, feel all that oxytocin,
Mm.
really just be like, I'm not going to wait till I have a baby and just hold my breath. I want a puppy. Or for somebody else, it's hot yoga. Or for somebody else, it's, everything in moderation and listen to your unique body. But I've had so many people, we hear these stories, right, where it's like, and then I stopped caring. And
Sure.
it's not, if there was a button or an acupuncture point that I could do to make that happen, I would, that's all I would do all day, every day. That's not how this works. But we can say, if I could get closer to that place mentally, what would I do?
Yeah.
Right? I would get the dog, or I would go on that trip, or I would think about this job change, or I would say yes to this thing. And that, I call those main entrees, truly holistically, like, and the IVF part should be like the a la carte, like side salad. And like,
Mm,
if you order only things that are reductionistic fixes, it's like you just ordered 50 baked potatoes and side salads, and all you're craving is like, I'm a meat eater. Like, I just want a hamburger,
sure.
and I haven't had a cocktail in a while, and maybe I want a margarita and some chips and some guac. And like, these are things like gratitude and connection and joy and purpose and all these things that are big picture, truly
Yeah.
holistic. And
Yeah.
equally scientific, just not in the fertility forums as much.
Sure, sure. So what I'm hearing you say is, just yes, we can add, there's, and I think you're so right. You kind of touched on it in the world of IVF and in the world of, especially, right, we're conditioned to, if I work hard, then
Hmm.
there's going to be a reward after the end of that, and that's not always true. And you have a lot of intended parents that have experienced that of, I've worked hard, I've done
Absolutely.
all of the things, and for some reason I'm not getting that result. And same with surrogates, and same with
Yes.
donors, and anyone that's in, just this space.
Yes.
And having that check back of like, hold on, take a
Yeah.
breather, exactly like you said, like, let's just for a minute, let's be grateful that, we get the opportunity to do this, or
Yeah.
let's be thankful that we have these people in our space, or let's honor the fact that we're frustrated by it, and we can acknowledge that, and that's
And
okay.
like, work with that. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's so important to be authentic and like do these big things. And I want to be very clear. It's not to say a side salad or a baked potato isn't sometimes medically essential to order.
Absolutely.
But you just don't want to order 50 more of those things when you're already ordering the biggest one that is maybe medically essential, right? Then we have to go back. And then how do we find the authentic thing? So it's not just this blanket, I'm grateful, I'm positive. It's, I am grateful for this amazing history of all the things that had to go into where we could extract eggs from ovaries and fertilize them and grow them in a lab to blastocysts and
Sure.
do all the things. And it doesn't mean that there's not a both ands, right? The
Oh,
mental health
absolutely.
provider was just talking about the both ands, right? But it's about equal opportunity, right? You're going to spend that time, most people, especially on the intended family side, where they've had all the hard knocks and the setbacks and the reasons to be sad and guarded and not get their hopes up. So
Yeah.
it's not about denying that. That's actually really quite harmful, and it shifts a lot of things in our bodies. We want to express those things. We want to honor them. We want to make space for them. And then we want to add the sort of equal opportunity balance. So I talk about it as yin and yang. Like, the yin is the dark nighttime part of it, and the yang is the bright sunshine part of it. And we would never want to just have it be all night or all day. It wouldn't be natural. And so
Mhm.
if we can say the nighttime is definitely in our hearts and in our mind, and we are aware of it, and so we're going to talk about it and do therapy and journal and join support groups and all of that. But we're also going to try to, like, I had a person who, she had had a lot of setbacks, and she got to her multiple transfers in, and she said, I know that this might not last, the other ones haven't, but I'm just going to take my embryo to the zoo this weekend.
Oh.
And I was like, that's so beautiful. Like, just that's an authentic joy that isn't contingent on the future and isn't tied to what has happened in the past.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So getting into a little bit of the nitty gritty, what
Hmm.
would you say is kind of a typical preparation plan like
Hmm.
for someone, seeing you ahead of a transfer?
Yeah, so it's if you're being truly holistic, we want to take the research and then we want to marry it with the customization of the person. So
Yeah,
some of the things that the research says is there's a study that says that having 8 acupuncture treatments prior to transfer can be helpful, and that doing it through egg stimulation and retrieval is more helpful than just adding it on the day of transfer alone. That said, that's not always in the budget. That's not
right.
always on the timeline where people hear about it. And so I never want somebody to feel stressed about it, because there's this 2 other studies that I like to talk about. And I have videos on my website about the research and links to all the research and how I specifically customize it. But there's another study that says that the best acupuncture, when they were comparing protocols with whole systems acupuncture, they called it, and sham acupuncture, whole systems acupuncture beat the others. And what they said was whole systems acupuncture was what we've been talking about, which
Right.
is what fits the person's budget, what their body was actually saying. Instead of this is just the protocol for egg stimulation, we're going to do what this person's body is also saying.
Hmm.
And so that outperformed the do these points 8 times before you do this procedure. And
Right.
then there's another study that I love. There was an RE that sent this to me when it got published, and she's like, Nicole, what do you think about this? And I was like, well, the study was that acupuncture was harmful in this study because they had it offsite with an acupuncturist the person had never met. And the conclusion of the study, if you read it, was that there was enough other data that said that acupuncture was either not harmful or helpful over and over and over, that the conclusion of this particular study was that they had to conclude that it was something about how it was done and the differences in the study, and the other ones were on site or with an established care provider that they felt
Uh-huh.
comfortable with. And so I was like, this is the best study of them all, because this is where I'll talk people out of, oh, I've had acupuncture, I hate it, but I really want you to come and do my transfer. And it's like, maybe get a massage the night before,
Yeah.
or, do that yoga class you really like, or something else. So it has to be everything.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, that makes sense. So you mentioned kind of the ideal, if
Uh-huh.
all of the pieces are aligning, is that egg stimulation to transfer. Obviously, that is not the situation when it comes to a
Yes.
surrogate.
Yep.
Um, but there's a different protocol with the surrogate. However, you are also, not only are you working with a surrogate, but you're also kind of working for, you're not for, but with intended parents as well. What's kind of that unique support that you would provide in those types of situations where it's the surrogate that's your physical patient,
Yeah.
but then there's also the intended parents that are part of that process too?
Yeah, there's so many ways to do this, and it's so sweet and so holistic. So it, there's a lot of information right on day of embryo transfer, doing acupuncture right before and possibly right after, hopefully on site if at all possible, makes it even more effective. And so I've done about 1,000 transfers. And when it comes to intended parents that are working with surrogates, it can look like so many different ways. So sometimes it's just like, just support the surrogate. We'll be over here doing our thing, just like thinking about you. And sometimes it's everybody in the room. Sometimes it's the intended mom and the surrogate. Sometimes it's the intended parents getting a few points and like kind of doing things together. And so again, true holism is what makes this feel really special to you guys. I told
Yeah.
you the story when we were emailing about a
Oh
couple.
yes, yes. You have to tell this story. It's so
this
hilarious.
is this is I mean, and this is a good example of sometimes you've had this hard journey, and then sometimes it's purely logistical. So this was a couple that was working with the surrogate because there were 2 intended dads, and they had really hit it off with their surrogate, and they had gotten to the point where they knew that she had a celebrity crush. And they were like, you're gonna be thinking about this guy, and you're gonna be, and just kind of having a fun
Sure.
time with it. And so as I was talking to them all and making sure they all were having the space to tell me what felt important for the day to feel the most supportive for them and trying to kind of weave it together. When I was talking to the dads, they were like, Nicole, is this crazy? We got a life-size cutout of her celebrity crush,
Oh my God.
and we're trying to figure out like where this could be a part of this day. And I was like, this is my address. Drop it off at my house. I will get there early and have it in the transfer in the acupuncture room at the IVF clinic. And so I come hauling this life-size cutout in, and the staff at the IVF clinic were just so fun with it. They were taking selfies.
Of course.
It made these two intended dads and this surrogate like just shine that day.
Yeah.
They walked in first and saw it, and then they were waiting for their surrogate, and she literally like fell down to her knees laughing as she walked in, and I was like, cancel the acupuncture. My job here is done. Like it's and we did the acupuncture, and they've worked together for two kiddos and have this amazing relationship like you feature so often on your show. But that I was like, that's such a, you'll never bring a giant character cut out to your transfer, or watch goat videos, or look at pictures of your biological kiddos that make you feel warm and fuzzy or whatever. But like there's so
Yeah.
many ways to make the surrogate feel that safety and joy and connection, and the same. So if the intended parents aren't there, creating that space for them to feel their authentic feelings. And it's okay to feel guarded. You're not going to jinx anything. Like, this is a big thing to let go of, this control,
Mhm.
and also a really hopeful, amazing thing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. Absolutely hilarious. But you're so right. Again, it really is that I feel like I say it ad nauseum, but every journey is so different and so unique but it's your journey. And I just love your approach of just that holistic. Let's look at the whole scenario. Let's look at all of the pieces, and then let's honor each of those things.
Hmm.
You once mentioned, I know, right, like there's all this skepticism when it comes to, just acupuncture and things of those things. What would you maybe say to someone listening who might feel the same, and kind of how would you want to bridge that gap between that Western medicine and Eastern medicine?
That's such a good question. And I first of all, I would never feel like if a person is so skeptical that it's not a curiosity, then I would
Yeah.
say that's okay. That's where you're at. You don't have to do this. But if a person is curious, I often will say, here's some information, and I like to share how it fills things that Western medicine isn't so great at, and vice versa. So
Yeah.
it's again about being more complete. So I think what Western medicine is really great at is reductionistic. Like I say, it's sort of like your whatever mainstream Western kind of medicine provider you're going to, it's like your main concern is a microscope slide. And they have this powerful microscope that is their training and the history of that medicine and their experience. And they're going to put it on, and they're going to be like, okay, let's look at your progesterone levels. Let's look at your antral follicle count. Let's look at all these things, your RE. But your RE isn't going to look at your digestive stuff. You have to go to a different microscope slide with a different provider with a different microscope, right? So when there's something on the microscope that can be found and worked on and improved and treated, Western medicine shines, and
Mhm.
we want to embrace that and celebrate that.
Yeah.
And then where it's not so good is this, like, we looked at your microscope, we can't really see anything obvious, or we can see something, but we don't really know what to do with that yet. Like, we don't
Mhm.
have the treatment, we're not sure what's evidence-based. And so that can be where Chinese medicine or holistic medicine can start to fill in those things, where it's, now this is a medicine that is observation based and experiential. And it's about, so I say that same main concern is like a piece of a puzzle. And I want to look at the lobes and the colors, right? You're not going to just blindly magically get the puzzle piece right if you don't examine it.
Yeah.
But I need to get more and more pieces of the puzzle. So what's your sleep like? What's your relationship like? What's your mood like? What's your periods like? Whatever is relevant. And then I put those all together and I can see things that are like, oh, it's this pattern of high threat, or it's this pattern of not quite having enough resources in this particular way that we can work on conserving and building up and things like that.
Yeah.
So when you put them together, you have a more complete way of working from different angles and the best shot at not only the best pregnancy test outcomes, but truly having the best outcomes ongoing for your quality of life, your mental health, being set up to be a parent, being set up for all the unknowns and lack of control that will continue. I have a whole blog post on my um, website that is when should I come in for acupuncture? I need to feature it differently, but it goes over all these links in science.
Yeah.
Like here's what we can look at on an fMRI. Here's what we can see when we do look at brain wave pattern changes. Here's what we can look at on ultrasound studies of the uterine
Mhm.
blood flow. So
Mhm.
it's really cool to talk about that stuff.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. We'll science nerd and geek it out for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So when for you, I mean, again, I know you had just your own personal experience, but when for you can you maybe just share like a moment where you were just like, okay, this stuff really works. Like it really,
Mm,
really, I can read article after article, but
yeah.
were you kind of like, no, this stuff really works?
This is this is embarrassing to say, but I've been doing this for 18 years, and I think up until COVID, I was like, "Oh, acupuncture is great, but there's a lot of different ways to do that."
Okay.
And it's the ideas and the education, like the ideas and the education, the framework, that is so important. And then COVID came and I shut down and I launched my online program that I had been putting together for 5 years. The timing
Mm,
worked out really well for that.
yes, it sure did.
And I was like, okay, this program that's all the ideas and anyone, whether they're getting acupuncture or not, can get it. And they don't have to go through me. I'm not going to be this bottleneck. And then I came back from COVID and everybody was extra in fight or flight mode, and
Sure.
I started doing acupuncture, and I was like, oh shoot, acupuncture is really special because it it does, and I mean this is going to be sciencey still, but it I was just witnessing how, whether you understand the science or not, and this is what I tell people on first visits, is I'm going to leave the room and you're going to be laying there with sharp, pokey things in your body that I just
Mhm.
stuck in your body. That doesn't sound relaxing at all. And I'm now going to leave you in this moment of the level of stimulation and screens and things that we have. I'm going to leave you for, in my clinic, it's 30 minutes. A lot of times it's 20 minutes or whatever. And you're going to have a call button to call me if you need me, but you're just going to be here for 30 minutes without anything else besides these needles in your body.
Yeah.
And you can just see like, this is I am not going to enjoy this. This is going to be
No, it
forever.
feels learning. You're
And then
like, it's a, I know for me, I was sitting there the very first time this happened and I was like, I'm
yeah,
missing something. I'm going to lose my mind in my
yeah,
own head. I'm just like racing thoughts.
right, right. And like, and that's what you would expect, right? Like you just did something sharp and you're pinned down literally and you can't do anything and oh my God. And and then and this is where it's important. If it is truly holistic and nervous system based kind of trauma informed acupuncture, because not all
Yeah.
acupuncture is that style, but if it is that, things happen. I say I feel like a little bit like wizardy. I know the science, but it still feels like I'm a wizard. I will come back in 30 minutes and people will be like, I have never relaxed that deeply in my life. I didn't know I was capable. That was not 30 minutes. Was that like
Yeah.
10 minutes? Are you sure? And I'll be like, actually, it was 35. And over and over since COVID, especially, it's like, oh, where else can you do that? Like, I'm going to make more than a half an hour feel like a blip while you feel like I say it's like I shut all the tabs and restart your computer for your nervous system.
Yeah.
It's wizardry. It's science, but
It's
it
fine.
feels like wizardry. So so that's where I mean 5 years ago in my 18-year career was I like, oh no, acupuncture is very specifically cool in this way.
Right. Oh my gosh, I love it. No, but I mean, yes, you can be in something for so long, and I love that it's still kind of, you get to have those aha moments of like, oh no, 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 no.
Yeah.
This is pretty fantastic. And to kind of
Mhm.
instantly see that result has got to just be amazing. I mean, it feels amazing.
It shocks me every time. Like I do it all day, 3 days a week, and I am just like, and I mean, the person can just be in a blind panic. Like,
Sure.
I just went in for my lining check. I have fluid in my uterus. My lining's only a 5. They want it to be over a 7 or 8. And I just think, okay, well, we're going to reset the nervous system, and they got to wait till their next lining check to see if they're going to get the go ahead, if things are going to change with the protocol tweaks or not. And I
Sure.
come back, and that person is like, oh, totally good. And it, and I'm like,
Right.
oh, get out the way.
Yeah, no, for sure. Oh, I mean, yeah, that's wizardry. That's magical. It's science,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
still.
Both, both.
No, both and no, that's
Hmm.
perfect. What, and we've kind of talked about it, and I shouldn't say we have talked about it, but just from for the people who love those hands-on things, right? Like
Hmm.
we always talk about the socks and the pineapples and the pomegranate juice and all of that.
Yes.
What are maybe just some small everyday things that people can do for their fertility from that TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, perspective, even if they aren't doing acupuncture?
Mm. Okay. I love, okay, so we're going to marry acupressure with some nervous system reset. So there's a point, I don't have a microphone here today. So there's a point right on the sternum, on the midline of the sternum, that stimulates the vagus nerve bundle. This is the nerves that tell your body to go into rest, digest, and reproduce. And
Mm,
so you can, if you like sort of pressure, your eyes do this too. If you put a weighted eye pillow on, you can put something weighted on your chest and lay and do a meditation there and see if it feels any different than just trying to follow the meditation without that either eye or chest stimulation. And then
mhm.
what I like is in Chinese medicine, there's always this idea of two things really mattering. It's, do you have enough, and is what you have available and in circulation, right? So
Mm,
you can get into like, what are we talking about when we're talking about enough, but it doesn't really matter at this level. And so do you have enough, and is it circulating? Is it actually available, and or is it stuck in fight or flight? So just by stimulating and telling your body, okay, get it back into circulation, that's going to be an instant way to improve the resources that your body's feeling. And then if you feel like you're the kind of person that's like, my intuition is I don't have enough. Like I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling depleted, I'm feeling
mhm.
worn down. The pressure idea is really nice on this. So like laying there still, kind of giving yourself space to just conserve, and maybe listening to a meditation or just doing some breath work with that pressure. But if you're the type of person, which oftentimes my patients are, at least 50% or more this, that are like, I'm pretty well resourced, but I'm really in the clenchy, what else can I do?
Sure.
Then we can add a sort of dissipating stimulation to this. So then we might just take our fingertips and, I don't want to make noise, but just tap and tap
Okay.
out into the intercostal spaces, so the spaces between the ribs, and we can, just do some movement and some
Mm,
percussion to kind of create that little like vibrational movement, and
okay.
really doing that. So depending on what, and it could be the same person but different day, right? I just got my period, I'm really tired, I'm losing blood, pressure. I'm waiting to find out if my surrogate is going to get a positive test or not. I'm feeling like I'm crawling out of my skin.
Yeah.
Then you're tapping. And so you can just do that subtle kind of difference.
Yeah. No, that's so super helpful. And I love how specific, and I feel like that's just for life in general. Even if you aren't a surrogate or an intended parent, I feel like just if you're just if you're just walking through daily life, I feel like those little moments are so great, and having something like that.
Yeah. And that's this, I love talking about small and cumulative. Like your scales of freak out and imbalance, mostly there's some really heavy bricks like
Yeah.
infertility on there, but a lot of it is just little things adding up. And so we're not going to magically take the brick of fertility struggles or recurrent loss off of that side of the scales that's feeling out of balance and feeling pressured, but we can offset. Like that's a
Right.
much more doable thing than just
Mhm.
like I that's a problem. That's not healthy. I don't want that. You're going to feel like you're failing. You're going to feel like you're losing that battle versus, oh, I can tap a little bit. I can do that eyeball pressure thing. I can do the how do I take my life off of hold? I can add acupuncture where it feels truly holistic and not faux holistic. I can do the ritual of making a pineapple smoothie with the pomegranate juice and all of that if I like how it tastes, but I'm also going to say no if it gives me a mouthful of canker sores and pineapple doesn't agree with my body.
Sure, sure.
It's just like, okay, now we've done all these things in a really nuanced way and it helps.
Yeah, no, I love that. What would maybe be your biggest piece of advice? And you've been dropping just
Hmm.
all kinds of little treasures throughout, but what would maybe be your biggest piece of advice for anyone that is preparing for an embryo transfer, whether they're carrying themselves or they're working with a surrogate? What would
Yeah.
be that biggest piece of advice you could give them?
I'm going to steal this line that's been living in my brain for like the last 6 months that I read in an NPR article. This was a maternal mortality expert. I wish I wrote down her name, but she said, we treat the baby like it's the peanut butter cup, and we treat the person carrying the baby like they're like the oily little paper shell. you know?
Wow,
And
yeah.
and that needs to change. So everything that I've been talking about, from being truly holistic to switching the ratios to really thinking about what's in service, like this is all about shifting our mindset. And this is my main mission in life by the time I retire is I want fertility culture to shift where we're super evidence-based and we can treat this medical complex biological thing
Yeah.
with confidence and with coverage.
Oh, yes, please.
and and at the same time we have stopped losing sight of that, like each individual person is this beautiful peanut butter cup that deserves to not be just beaten down and trodden upon and dismissed, and that means your sleep and your relationships and your quality of life right now.
Yeah.
And then that's what protects you when you're a parent, however you
Mm.
become a parent. So that's my main shift is we just have to shift the ratios. And yes, IVF, surrogacy, donor egg, all of this is really big things, but we cannot make them our main entrees all day, every day, or it's not healthy.
Those are amazing pathways and journeys. And for the intended parent, right, but don't lose sight of
Yeah,
your overall, I mean, we all know you want the baby,
of
but
course.
don't lose sight of all of the beautiful steps in between that and honoring that
Yeah,
and
yeah.
sitting with
And
you.
and if the beautiful steps are like, oh my gosh, I have PTSD, that doesn't mean that it has to feel easy or nice, but it's you matter. Your PTSD from going through these losses or these setbacks and having to let go of this and this grief. If you are the peanut butter cup here, then that needs to be part of this treatment. And that needs to be, it's not just when we get a baby, all of a sudden we're gonna put our life back together, work on it. Do it now because it makes the
Mm.
treatments more likely to work and it
Yeah,
protects you and you matter. Like it's
yeah.
cliche, but it's like I just want to like give every single person this sort of push to connect the dots and know that it's not just this nice fluffy add-on. It is the treatment. It
Hmm.
is the best practice. It is the best fertility care. And
Hmm.
it's just like so much better than what we're doing.
Sure. Yeah. Again, just going back to that whole body, right? Like, yes, you as an intended parent, if you exactly like what you said, work on yourself now
Mhm.
and keep honoring what your body is doing. And then for the surrogate, right? Like
Mhm.
you're doing something amazing. Let's honor that. Don't just think of yourself as only what your body can do. Let's honor what your whole body is doing. And
Yes.
let's, help you alongside that. Exactly like what you said. Those hormones are doing great, big, great, wonderful things, but they can also be really hard. Let's
And
honor that.
pregnancy, like that's insane. Like I you've done it for twins twice. Like I can't even imagine. I have two kiddos and I was nauseated morning, noon, and night with my son for 30
Sure.
weeks. It's just like and that like and this was 14 years ago. It's like, yeah, well, you're sick. If I were doing this now, I'd be like, no, tell me what medications are available and give me the pros and again,
Sure.
like this all matters because when we're not feeling totally overwhelmed by being sick I mean, I wept in the Trader Joe's the first time I went back and didn't want to throw up because I was
So excited.
so that's that's weird that it was like nobody was like, "Hey, that's not cool. That seems hard."
Yeah. Well, I think we talk about it a lot when it comes to just women's health in general. It right is kind of this idea of, well, it just is, and we should
Yes.
just accept that.
Yeah.
And no, it's
Yeah.
not just is. This is why
Yeah.
fertility should be treated as, there's a health issue. This is
Mhm.
why like this should not just be treated as, something just off to the side. Like this matters. All parts of it matter.
Yes, all parts of it. And it's not because mental health is separate and important, it's because mental health is enmeshed in the outcomes
Yeah.
and interconnected. And you cannot hurt one without hurting the other. And you can help one by helping the other. And I think we just totally miss this because we're so reductionistic and because of the way this sort of medicine in particular you just alluded to. It's like this Wild West special subset of medicine where a lot of the things that we would never do in other kinds of biological, complicated medical conditions still fly. You wouldn't be like, oh, you had a heart attack? Well, you could pay out of pocket for a stent, or you could, here's a glue stick, put some pictures of people with healthy hearts on this poster and try to imagine, it's it's
Yeah.
really it's really we have to think about what serves women and people and the people that are involved around that baby, however that baby is happening.
Hmm.
And then the baby piece is easier to treat, easier to troubleshoot when it is medically complex.
Right. Right. Absolutely. No, I think that just it sums that up just beautifully. Beautifully. Well, I have one last question, and you probably know where I'm going. And really, Nicole, again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to really break down something that can seem so woo woo and mystical and wizardy, what is actually, there, like you said, there is science and it really does embody this idea of treating a whole person,
Mhm.
and not just a part of it. And I love that so much. But my last question for you is, as everyone who knows me, they know that coffee and I are very codependent. And I always love to ask the question, what filled your cup today? Literally or figuratively, what is the thing that has filled your cup?
I mean, honestly, doing this, I feel like from our emails, you're such a kindred spirit. I love how much you love empowering and connecting the dots. So this is a total joy. It is also my husband's birthday.
Happy
So
birthday!
happy day to him. And he does all my production, as we were talking about before this. So celebrating the people behind the scenes that make this possible too, the partners that toil to get the editing and to make the graphics and to be awesome partners and support us doing this work that speaks to our heart. All of that fills my bucket and just taking time to be with another person that experiences that and to share with more of your audience. I said this in my email. I always encourage people, look at what you think is worst case scenario. Like, oh, I wouldn't want to do surrogacy, but like learn about it, because sometimes there's this clarity or this sort of thing that you hear that you didn't know was a thing, and it might be a no clarity, but it sometimes is a like openness clarity, and so I started listening to this podcast just because I want to have more ways to share with patients to explore options. So you're filling my cup in all sorts of ways, and I'm really
Oh,
grateful for the
Nicole.
work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. And I'm grateful for the work that you are doing. And so if you will please tell our audience, for anyone who does want to continue to be more curious and have a reliable resource to maybe start some of their own just exploratory and research, where would they go?
So my website is lifehealinglife.com, which sounds redundant. It's as opposed to doctor fixing patient, it's life healing life.
I love
And if
that.
you go there, there's a tab with online education. So no matter where you are, people all over the world do courses. It takes you to my blog, to my YouTube, and I'm in the Twin Cities. So if you're in the Twin Cities and want to reach out, there's ways to explore reaching out and ways that I can personally support too. But it's all at lifehealinglife.com. And I've got a 1-week course, a 90-day course, tons of freebies. And one freebie in particular, I mentioned the acupressure one, but the freebie that's called the Extra Awful Infertility Guide, it's really made, it's like one of my most special freebie babies. Um, because it's extra unfair sometimes. Like the people that are looking at donor egg and surrogacy are often falling on the part of the bell curve that nobody wants to fall onto, but somebody has to. And so this is the reframes and the trauma informed mental health support for
Yeah.
like processing that part of it. So
Yeah.
that's free and that's on the website too.
I love that. I love that. Well, again, Nicole, thank you so much. And we will also have all of those in our show notes as well. So for those of you who are driving and, not writing things down, they'll be in the show notes as well. But again, thank you so much, Nicole. And
Such a pleasure.
I'm so grateful for you.
Same.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Me, You, and Who. We appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed our discussion today. As we wrap, we would like to remind you of some of the ways that you can stay connected with us and be part of the Me, You, and Who podcast community. Firstly, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode and can stay up to date with our latest content. But that's not all. We also have an exciting YouTube channel where we share some bonus content, behind the scenes glimpses, and video versions of our episodes. Head over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button there as well. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when the new episodes go live. And for more exclusive updates, engaging discussions, and a chance to connect with fellow listeners. Be sure to follow us on our social media accounts. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Create a Happy Family. If you're interested in finding out more about creating a happy family, please visit us at www.createahappyfamily.com. Thank you again for being part of the Me, You, and Who community. Your support means the world to us. I can't wait for you to join us next time as we continue to share stories and journeys of creating happy families.